An Iranian official has reportedly told the Reuters news agency that around 2,000 people, including security personnel, have been killed during protests in the country. This is the first time that an official person has acknowledged the high death toll from an intense crackdown on more than 2 weeks of demonstrations in the country. Meanwhile, the US President Donald Trump tonight urging Iranians to keep protesting and saying that help is on the way without specifying what that could entail. Let's discuss this further with Na'eem Jeenha, Executive Director at the Afro-Middle East Centre. Na'eem, a very good evening to you. Welcome back to SABC News. So we're hearing a ratcheting up of the rhetoric, if you will, from Donald Trump on Truth Social this evening. But I wonder if we're actually at a point where a full-on confrontation is possible between Washington and Tehran, or if this is the very standard sort of threats and saber-rattling that has characterized the relationship between the two countries for more than 40 years.
Well, with Donald Trump, one can never say what he exactly means. So he started early last week with very heavy threats against Iran, ended with that message that you just read out now. But yesterday, or early today, there were meetings that he had with the security team. And then they were saying that they have various options available, one of which is a military attack, another of which is what he said he wants to do now is levy tariffs, 25% tariffs on any country that trades with Iran. Another is targeted sanctions on individuals within Iran, etc. Kind of diluting that initial military threat that he was issuing. But the message that he put out today, in a sense, is a bit late now, because by today, much of the protests have dwindled. Died down. I think last week, Thursday, was the high point in those protests. From yesterday, we saw pro-government demonstrators taking to the streets as well. And the protests that were there have kind of died down. So his call, and of course, such a call is against international law. You don't call on citizens of a country to take over the country's institutions. But what is more likely is that Israel will decide that it needs to continue its war that it started last year, June. That is a very real possibility. Israel has been trying to get the United States on board to join it in such an adventure. It's unclear whether the US will, but Israel is determined to go to war again with Iran, and that could happen in the next couple of weeks.
Well, Trump also says in his post on Truth Social this evening, when read in full, perhaps we could bring that up for everyone watching to also have a read at the same time, where he says, Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of the killers and abusers. They will pay a big price. I have cancelled all meetings with Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. Help is on its way. Now we're all wondering what shape that help will take and what exactly this punishment would look like.
Yeah, that's unclear. As I said, so he's already said that he wants to implement these sanctions against countries that trade with Iran, which is a huge problem, because soon after that statement was issued, the Chinese ambassador in Washington issued a statement saying that China will not be bullied with these tariff stories. Even though Trump, of course, didn't mention China, China clearly understood that they were in that firing line. Others that do business with Iran include American allies, the UAE, Iraq, some European states. So to levy tariffs or to increase tariffs on them by 25% is a bit strange, perhaps a non-starter. The other one, of course, as I said, was possibly sanctions, but it's not clear what he means by help will come. And as I said, him now calling on protesters to take over institutions, essentially, regime change, at a time when many of those protests have faded away.
But when you look at what the Americans did to Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela at the beginning of this month, does that make the prospect of the Iranian government being overthrown through American involvement or solo American mission more likely?
No, I don't think so. Iran is not Venezuela. Iran already from last week after Israel sent a message calling on protesters and to continue their protests and saying that Mossad agents were on the streets with them, etc. Iran has taken a war position. It's declared, it sent out notices to air missions, essentially declaring parts of its skies as no-fly zones, which means that any aircraft that cross those areas will immediately be shot down. They're preparing for a war.
Right.
They expect that there will be that Israel will launch a war. So there's going to be no success in any American attempt to go in and kidnap people, etc. Anyway, Donald Trump said no boots on the ground. So,
and the Iranian foreign minister speaking, Na'eem, in the last few hours, in the last day or so, said they were still open to negotiations, but they're also willing to take the hard route if it comes down to that. They still say that there are legitimate concerns by the Iranians who've been demonstrating for more than 2 weeks now about a high cost of living crisis, a currency that has lost much of its value, and those issues remain, right, even though the government says that it believes that some of the unrest or the protests have been fomented through foreign influence. What becomes of the Iranians who are suffering under an economy that is simply unable to meet the daily demands? People who want to feed their families, get to school, build a better life. What becomes of their wishes in all of this?
Well, this is the thing. The Iranian government might have good intentions. They said that they want to deal with these legitimate grievances, as they themselves have said. The point is that Iran has been living under sanctions for the past 47 years. It is not able simply to improve the economy by doing things itself. As long as sanctions remain, the economy will be as bad as it is, with maybe little improvement here or there. So the miserable conditions of the Iranian people will continue as long as these sanctions continue. So these promises, as I say, maybe they're well-intentioned, but they're really a bit of a pie in the sky. And so the possibility of negotiations, I think the Iranians would like to have such negotiations with the US so that they can put on the table the removal of some sanctions. But Trump's last Truth Social message, he said no more meetings with Iranian officials. So we don't know what that means. Although the foreign minister, as you quoted, said that his chats with Witkoff, Trump's envoy, continue. So whether there will be talks or not, we don't know.
Good to talk to you, Na'eem Jeenha, Executive Director at the Afro-Middle East Centre, talking to us about the recent tensions between Washington and Tehran.